It's Just Business with Steve Thomas and your host, Chris Larry. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of It's Just Business. My name is not Chris Larry. He is out this weekend. We give him a break every once in a while. I'm Steve Thomas. With me, we have our regular sub, Alex Zeese. How are you?
I'm good, Steve. How are you doing? Happy 4th of July to you.
Absolutely. Happy 4th of July weekend to everybody. We're recording this on the 4th of July. By the way, this is the show where we talk about all things sports business related. As Chris likes to say, the sports media industrial complex. But that's what we're doing here today. We're in the first hour of a recording marathon. Alex and I will be doing the hog sty in about an hour. So we feel like legitimate radio people here talking all morning.
Yeah. It's a morning show's worth of production. We do 2 hours when we have to do this. So that's always fun.
Yeah, it's like, my voice is always like, hacked out by the end of this marathon.
Yep.
It's an interesting.
Then we'll just both be, I'm sure, going and eating more burgers and hot dogs and whatever else you want to do on the 4th.
Well, unless we have to go then mix the audio, which my OCD does not let it sit, and so I have to do it like right after. So I will be done with this whole adventure like noon today. That's my normal.
But that's perfect time. That's perfect barbecue time.
Well, yeah, except, as you know, I'm not a big party person, so I'm not sure how many barbecues I would willingly participate in.
Sure. That's true.
Because you had people at your house, you said.
Yeah, I did. I did a little cookout for just a couple friends. I think there were 5 of us all together, so, just my one friend brought meat to make burgers. He's like, is this enough? And it was enough to make about 20 burgers for 5 people. So I was like, I think we'll be okay with that.
I don't know. Some people eat a lot of burgers, man.
Oh, I think I had 2 burgers, 2 hot dogs yesterday. So, I was putting it away.
Well, speaking of people who can probably eat a lot of burgers, the NCAA name, image, and likeness story has reached its apex. We've talked about this on this show a couple times recently, but it's finally happened. See, to recap, everybody, in case you have been living under a rock, by a year ago, the state of California kicked off the controversy by passing a law. This is one of the only things the state of California's ever done that's any good. They passed a law that said all students in the state of California can profit off their name, image, and likeness, and that ran directly contrary to the NCAA rules. And so the NCAA, of course, did nothing about it then, and that generated 18 other states passed these laws. Now, the California's law didn't kick in until 2023, but 5 or 6 of these other states kicked in on July 1st. So that forced the NCAA's hand. Now, they meaning the NCAA leadership, quote, I put that in air quotes because they don't really have valid leadership, just a bunch of morons who try to, pretend to run the NCAA. But they contemplating having some sort of approval board type arrangement, which frankly probably would have been smart and necessary, but they didn't do that. And instead, on literally the eve of this law taking effect, literally the day before, as in June 30th, passed a rule that said everybody can, it's a free-for-all, all students can profit. And so when July 1st came about, we saw a bunch of stories about athletes who had immediately entered into a bunch of athletes had immediately entered into various agreements. Like Master P's son had a $2 million deal. He's an athlete at I forget where.
Yeah, I mean, the interesting thing when you talk about what these athletes are getting endorsement deals from, half the brands they're talking about I've never heard of. It seems like, a lot of smaller or regional brands. Who was it? Spencer Rattler signed with some fast food chain that I don't think is on the East Coast at all. Some chicken chain. I know, who was it? Bo Nix got a lot of quarterbacks obviously are getting, a lot of big time quarterbacks are getting these deals right away. It's been interesting to see just how quickly this has happened.
Well, and Alex, because we've negotiated our sponsorship deals such as they are, and we certainly appreciate the sponsors we've had, although we've intentionally excluded this show from those deals,
Right.
for a reason. But you can do those pretty quickly, like the smaller ones, because we're not sponsored by Coke.
No.
It's we do have something in the works that's pretty cool, but regardless, when you're talking about a big deal, like you don't sign to Nike in a day.
No, that takes months worth of work, I'm sure.
Yeah, it does to do that, and so that's coming. But the smaller ones can be done immediately. My concern with this, I'm torn by this, and I said this before. This is why I wanted to. You have different political views than I do. My political views on this, the capitalist in me says, "Oh, this is great. Free market. That's all. All that." But the other side of it is, I'm not sure that this is really good for education, and forget the university economics of it. I'm talking about, do you really want the wide receiver at Alabama driving around campus in a Ferrari?
Sure.
And, the whole basketball team at Duke basically, being multimillionaires. To me, a part of me, the non-capitalist part of me, says that it's separating those students even more from the general populace, and really just totally gives up the pretense that they're student athletes at all. That's so I'm torn about it. I don't care if Bo Nix signs with some chicken chain or whatever.
Right.
Who cares? But that's not what's going to happen. At some point, you're going to have, especially basketball guys, there's going to be people who are signed to 8-figure shoe deals when they're freshmen. And I'm not sure that there's a downside to that. It's good, great, market yourself. The free market dictates how much money you make. But I don't know how good that is ultimately for the educational system. That's been my worry.
Well, I think, I'm with you in that there is a bit of a conflict. Part of me thinks, yeah, kids should get whatever money they, like when I was in college, I had a job. So anyway, I worked like a minimum wage job in college, and, that's the money you pay your rent off of, and that's what you live off of. Part of me sees nothing wrong with these kids getting these deals in that respect. It really shows you just how badly the NCAA messed it up, though, because you've had years to kind of be ready for this and come up with a plan, and you never did. You never maybe... me just sitting here spitballing a solution that would have made sense. Come up with... You can sign whatever deals you want, come up with some kind of reasonable cap while they're in school of how much money they can take out, and just push it all into some kind of trust fund until they're out of college. You could have come up with a solution like that. That would have been probably solved a lot of these concerns you're talking about, I feel like.
Yeah, it would. And having an NCAA clearinghouse for these contracts would have probably been useful. Because what you don't want athletes to be signing up with like gamblers, casinos and sports betting stuff and stuff that really compromises the integrity of the game. And because the NCAA basically threw up their hands and kind of gave up, which they essentially neglected their duties. Let's say it like that. That's the fear, I think, for me, is that you move the what's the word I'm trying to say? You move the corruption into the open, so to speak. That's my fear. Is aside from you don't the student athlete part of it, the integrity of the game part is that now you're going to have kids, 18-year-olds, who really lack the ability to see the big picture because they're kids.
Sure.
Still, I don't know if it's good for the integrity of the sport to have them sign up with stuff like that. And so there should have been rules, and the NCAA should have put some sort of control on it, and instead they've done nothing, which surprised no one.
And yeah, again, it doesn't surprise me at all. The thing that I'm more worried about, and I've seen some indications that this is already going to start happening, and I think it was the one thing we've always talked about with college sports is how kids were getting paid under the table anyway. I found an article going back to 1989 saying that up to 2/3 of the SEC football players were getting paid under the table. That was like in-depth research thing that was done. So that's been going on forever. So that's why when these people are like, oh, you shouldn't pay players, it's been going on my whole life. It's been going on your whole life, probably longer.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
We did a story 2 years ago about on this show. Chris and I did about the NCAA or the FBI investigating Adidas, Nike, and certain
sure.
NCAA basketball coaches for the shoe companies funneling money basically through middlemen to high school players in exchange for steering them to certain schools and sort of under the table commitments that they would sign with that shoe company after, and that was the FBI was involved because now you're talking about basically wire fraud, and so then it becomes a federal crime, and that's why and I don't know whatever became of that investigation. It sort of went dark, but you're absolutely right. This has been going on forever, since certainly before our time. It's been good since the beginning.
The thing that's going to get weird real quick is I already saw one story reporting this, where like the local radio station that's affiliated with the school's football and basketball program was like, any 5-star recruits, we will pay you X amount of dollars. I think it was 25 grand or something. If you sign here, and you will do a weekly appearance on the show. So suddenly,
what's the Wild Wild West?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the problem. The NCAA needed to put a cap on this. And by the way, you can't enter into a contract by yourself if you are not the age of majority anywhere. So if they're approaching underage, under the age of majority, meaning 17 and under, that requires parental consent for that, incidentally. But that's the perfect example. It would have been far better if the NCAA had set some boundaries to this. Instead, what you have is radio stations recruiting 17-year-old basketball players, and throwing money at them. It's and there's, by the way, there's a difference here between, I don't know, some, pick your, like the starting point guard at Duke getting multi-millions of dollars in shoes, and then like some random volleyball player signing up with a local gas station. There's a difference in the money. There's a difference in the impact on the university. That the latter doesn't bother me so much. It's the former example that bothers me most, because I just don't, because the NCAA didn't set any boundaries and guidelines, and I'm just worried about what this does to these programs. It makes them professional programs.
It does, and I worry about that, but I also worry about how does this impact the mentality of the kids, of course, because now they're just going to be even more entitled, and let's be honest, pro athletes at major schools are already some of the most entitled people that exist. So that's going to be a problem
absolutely.
too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, and you have to start wondering about how long these kids are going to stay in school. A positive is it may make them stay longer.
Well, it depends on the sport, right? Like if you're basketball is like a weird sport in that I feel like like 2 or 3 guys come out of the college ranks every year who are actually like really gonna be like a top pick. They're like elite NBA level right away. I know 30 kids can be drafted and they'll make good money in that.
Well,
first
no, it's
round.
60. They have 2 rounds.
Yeah, but the first round you're talking about a couple million. In the second round, it's the contracts keep going down, right? It's
in the first round, contracts are guaranteed.
Right.
In the second round, I don't believe are.
Yeah,
so, yeah.
Exactly. Like, it's really only worth
You're going to have,
Yeah.
realistically, there's like 10 or 15 of them who are superstars.
Right.
Like the top half of the first round, roughly, are the guys you're talking about.
Right. But that's my point. Like, if you don't think you're going to be that right away, yeah, stay in college. Make $60,000 a year in college until you're ready to go out. Why not?
Yeah, I mean, and a lot of these kids will say they're trying to help out their families and their parents, the ones that are from, lower economic circumstances. And let's face it, a lot of them are, sad to say, but it's, we got to speak the truth here and on this show. And so, in that respect, those type of kids can help out their families and maybe stay in school longer, whereas otherwise they would just be one and done. Because this is how basketball works, okay? In case anybody's wondering. This is how basketball major programs work. They have to do the first semester of academics. I'm talking about these major prospects. They do the first semester, and then they basically are done they have to stay eligible through like the first half of the spring semester, and then that's it. Because then they get into the NCAA tournament, and then that's all anybody really cares about. And so they really only have to go to school for a little over one semester. And that's not really an academic experience. And so if some of these kids can help out mom and dad or whoever their parental figure is back home through a shoe contract, maybe it will make them stay in school longer. So I think that a positive of that is that there won't be the crushing need to make money as soon as possible if they have some money.
Sure. And so, the other thing that I think, this is what remains to be seen with this name, image, likeness situation. I think basketball, you'll see a lot of kids getting some kind of contract. Football will only be a major quarterbacks and, a few names here and there. But look, if a 5-star offensive lineman signs with Alabama, Alabama's happy, but no one's given him $1 million contract, I don't think. I might be wrong, but I just don't, it's only going to be those superstar positions, the high-profile positions that you're going to really see anything. The one thing that's happened that I didn't expect right away is the number of women athletes getting high-profile deals, and let's be honest, mostly because they're hot. There's like this pair of twins in Fresno who have some big social media following because they're two cute twin basketball players. And then there's a gymnast who got something, I think, out of LSU, they have these big social media profiles because they're cute young women. And that's why they're getting these deals all of a sudden.
Well, I haven't seen those two examples myself, but I mean, sex sells.
Yeah, of course.
It's misogynistic, but it's also the truth. As you said, if there are attractive women athletes, absolutely. I mean, because we all know, and again, this is just the truth, there really isn't a women's sport that is a net positive moneymaker for the schools, okay? There isn't. Even the women's basketball is probably...
It's the highest profile.
The highest profile and closest, but I just can't imagine... I know that those are still loss leaders because it's the men's basketball and the men's football and the football team makes all the money for everyone else.
If it does, I mean, even football, loses money at a lot of schools because it.
But you combine, known athlete in their town, female, I'm talking about, with high social media presence. And attractive, that would be all you need to make at least some money. I mean, you're not going to be on major national marketing campaigns, maybe, but the social media aspect of it is, I think, an interesting byproduct of the rule here because there are a lot of people that make money, tons and tons of money on TikTok.
Yeah.
Twitter,
and Instagram, all that. Yeah.
I'm not on any of it, and I've never been on TikTok. But there are these kids that make a ton of money on it, and now these athletes can do that, where they really weren't allowed to before. Some of them were.
So I looked up. It's Hannah and Haley Cavinder. Those are the two basketball players I'm talking about. They play at Fresno, so it's not like they're even at a major school. You don't think of Fresno when you think of college sports, really.
Well, no, you're talking about Fresno State.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. But they signed a deal with Boost Mobile, which, it's not AT&T or Sprint, but that's a major phone carrier. And I think they have something like 300,000 followers on Instagram or something like that. It's ridiculous. That's how this. I could have predicted the quarterbacks. I could have predicted even like UConn women's basketball team getting ad deals because that's the biggest one you think of when you think of women's basketball. I would not have predicted social media and the impact that would have had on people getting deals.
I mean, the example I've used on this show before with that is are like local deals.
Right.
The women's softball team may not be able to be a part of like a national Boost Mobile campaign, but they could sell do the local car dealer ads. That was kind of what I was thinking. I really hadn't contemplated this example you're bringing up, which is, the hot women,
Right.
basically, because that's what it's about.
Right.
So that's something I should have contemplated, but I just didn't.
Now, you and I both have a bit of a blind spot there, I feel like. Maybe we've gotten too old. We don't really even think about it.
Well, but it's a good point you bring up, which is the social media presence. It's sort of the way of the world now with advertising. And someday, I don't have any numbers or anything to back this up, but I'd really like to do a study as to the percentage of advertising dollars that are going from between traditional media, meaning TV and radio, and then social media.
Sure.
I'd like to know what it is, and I don't know. And someday maybe I'll look this up. But it's only going to get more slanted to social media as time goes on.
Look,
So,
you know as well as I do, there's probably hundreds of things out there that analyze that. We just never have looked for it. So
yeah, I never contemplated it.
Yeah.
Like I said, I'd like to look that up at some point in time. But the overarching point here is, like I said, the fact of the matter is that the NCAA should have set boundaries. They haven't set boundaries. It's not what they've done, because they acted literally on the afternoon of June 30th, and their action was to say, we're just letting everybody do whatever they want, instead of coming up with a program for this. They could have had a clearinghouse. They could have had, at a minimum, contractual boundaries. They could have made the universities set up an oversight committee if you don't want the NCAA to manage it themselves. Do it by conference, something. But instead, they just did nothing, and so that leads to what we see now, which is immediate mass of a whole ton of contracts. And so there are going to be unknown impacts that we haven't thought about. And the one you ought to worry about, like I said before, is gambling. I don't know if you want student athletes who are 18 signing up to be spokesmen for a casino, for sports betting stuff. That's when all of a sudden you start to bring the integrity of the game into question, and it's something the NCAA could have avoided, and of course they haven't. So I think that if you want the business and legal point out of it, I think that's it.
Yeah, and I think so the next question is going to be, how long does it go like this until they figure something out? Because look, you and I think both could safely assume this is going to blow up in their face sooner rather than later.
Oh, yeah.
So
sure.
they're going to have to come up with those rules. But the
I don't think
NCAA
the NCAA
is not
is
known for
capable of it.
acting, like we've said.
Well, yeah. I don't think they're capable of coming up with rules. They've tried and failed.
Yeah. But
Come up with rules already.
You and I have sat here for 20 minutes, and we've come up with more solutions than I think they've considered.
Yeah, I know. And that's like, Chris said that last week, too, about this. Or 2 weeks ago. If a couple of morons who are on
a
small, tiny podcast
Yeah.
can come up with a solution, because I guarantee you I could come up with rules in 20 minutes. If you and I sat, we could do it live on the air. And
we kind of did.
Program.
You listed a couple. I listed the whole idea
Yeah.
of setting up trust funds. Those would be very reasonable things to do to help this.
Yes, all those are great ideas and should have been contemplated. And of course, there's legal issues to be contemplated when you're talking about forcing trust funds on people and stuff. But yes, those kind of ideas should have been kicked around. And the problem with the NCAA is that their leadership is totally incompetent.
Right. It's also
That's
1,000 years old, it feels like.
And it's corrupt.
Right.
It's not led by intelligent people. I don't know if you saw this, but a couple of weeks ago, maybe a month ago, Mark Emmert just got excoriated in front of the Senate.
No, I didn't see that.
Yeah, he got Mark Emmert is the president of the NCAA, and the Senate. I don't even know what he was testifying about, because I only saw a couple of minutes of this. But these senators are just making him look foolish, for good reason.
Yeah, which says a lot, because I've sat on a couple of hearings. It's they usually are a mess to begin with. So,
because here's a little secret. A lot of people in Congress are not that bright.
No,
they're there because they're ambitious, not because they're smart.
Sure.
And they're power hungry.
Yeah. You want the easiest way to get power, But The one thing I just thought of this, Steve, because we also have the Olympics coming up. How does this impact? You know how in the Olympics there's the whole amateurism clause for a lot of sports still, that you can't have been participating at a professional level, made money.
That's essentially gone now.
Yeah, but I think it's gone in sports like basketball, obviously, hockey in the winter, but there are sports like I feel like they still care about that, and it's the lesser sports. I wonder how this will impact that long run. Well, because a gymnast or a volleyball player both have signed these contracts now, advertising contracts.
I hadn't thought about this. I would have done some research out ahead of time, but if I had thought about it.
It's just an interesting question to put out there, too.
I don't know if the Olympics are really enforcing amateurism rules on those sports, like, for example, gymnastics, more so than they're just amateurs, because there is no professional outlet to be had. And when you're talking about gymnasts, they're like 17, 18-year-old girls who are minors, when they started all this. And so I just don't know if that's been contemplated. Like I know a lot of these track and field athletes are professionals.
Right.
Like the big time sprinters and stuff are pros. The basketball team are NBA, 100% NBA team players at this point. And so like the volleyball team, for example, I guess I don't know enough about the players to know, but I can tell you, like the beach volleyball, there were women's beach volleyball players who, I can't remember the names escape me right now, but there was one particular women's beach volleyball team that was doing it together, two women, for like 15 years, and they won everything, and they were professionals,
right?
So I don't know if that's going to matter so much in the Olympics. But it's an interesting thought, but I don't know if the Olympics will care in any way anymore.
Yeah,
they gave up amateurism a long time ago.
Yeah, it would be an interesting contest. Who's more corrupt, the U.S. Olympic Committee or the NCAA at this point, or FIFA? You could throw them in too.
That's tough because there have been people charged with crimes in association with Olympic corruption
and FIFA, and the NCAA.
Yeah, that's true. But it was like the even in the U.S. has happened. What year was it? It was a U.S. Winter Olympic Committee that
the
got
Utah
all
Olympic.
in trouble. Yeah, that one, people went to jail over it. And corruption and all of that.
I think they wrote cash bribe on the bribe and handed it to him. In front of
genius. It was like genius level action.
Yeah. It's just another factor that I don't know if that's even been considered. Like you said, the Olympics have kind of given up on amateurism, but
it's all about money now. The original concept of the Olympics was amateur athletics just for the pure sport of it, and in the spirit of international togetherness. That was really sort of the intent of not the ancient Greek Olympics, but the revival of it 100 years ago was that. And I think that is long ago out the window. I think the watershed moment was when we were allowed to send the Olympic Dream Team to the Olympics.
Oh, yeah.
Then all of a sudden,
that's definitely it. 1992.
Yeah, and then it's just over. At that point.
Yeah.
It's
gone down.
Yeah. Well, speaking of going downhill, we're going to dive into another segment of athletes behaving badly on this show. And this story comes from my beloved Los Angeles Dodgers, which, by the way, congratulations on going up 3-0 on the Washington Nationals in their 4-game series. Very happy about that. Glad to see the Nationals lose those 3 games and the Dodgers win. One more game today. Hopefully they can make it a clean sweep. But be that as it may, so this is the Trevor Bauer story. And for those of you who don't know, Trevor Bauer has had controversy in his past. He is, by all accounts, not a particularly nice guy. And so the allegations that have come up against Bauer, in this case, are brutal and ugly. And it's sexual abuse, sexual assault. What happened here is he met some woman. All this is alleged. He met some woman on social media. They connected. She made made it known that she was into rough sexual conduct,
Right.
allegedly. And so the story goes that Bauer took that to a dramatic extreme, and the woman has alleged that he punched her all over, and not just on her face, but in her genital areas and whatnot. She said she liked to be choked, and what that means to most people is not the length that Bauer allegedly took it to.
Not to the point of passing out. Yes.
She claims she went unconscious and she woke up to him sodomizing her without her consent, and it went, believe it or not, downhill from there.
Yeah. Yeah. The story of what she's saying happened is pretty brutal. And
that's about the sum and substance of it is sort of what I said. But there's a she got a restraining order against him,
right?
And so there is a statement in the public record about it that I intentionally didn't pull. I really didn't want to read it all on this show here. So then the question becomes, what to do about it? This is sort of where I wanted to start with this. So the Dodgers did nothing and deferred to Major League Baseball. A lot of Dodger fans were very upset about this. A lot of Dodger fans wanted them to cut Bauer immediately and get rid of him. It's not that easy to do that in baseball, people. And, well, I've got a whole nother line to this, but to finish the backstory to this, Major League Baseball placed him on 7-day administrative leave. That's basically paid leave. That's the same thing like when there's a police shooting, they put the cop on vacation for a week and pay him. This is the same thing.
I mean, it's the equivalent of a 1-day suspension in a way because he's a pitcher, if you think about it.
Well, it's not really a suspension because he's getting paid. But yes, he would hypothetically only miss one start if he came back and the administrative leave is over. But here's where I wanted to go with this. So now we have an allegation. We don't have proven facts. We do have a court did issue a restraining order, and typically that means that, and I don't do domestic violence cases and stuff, so this is not totally my area here, but typically when what the court looks for in a restraining order is there a likelihood of success? And so, it's ex parte. So Bauer isn't there. Bauer's attorneys aren't there. It's just the other side testifying. And so she says, "Hey, I have all these pictures. This happened." And the court says, essentially, we believe you enough to issue a restraining order, basically, especially considering it's domestic violence stuff. So it's not a completely unverifiable situation, but it's nonetheless not proven facts. Bauer has denied this. His attorney strongly denied it. And so the question really, it's sort of a Me Too kind of question. What is the team's obligation here? What should they do about it, if anything? And like I said, a lot of Dodger fans wanted to cut him. My view of it is, if it's an allegation, it's an allegation. I think you have to let the investigation play out.
Well, I think there's it's an interesting question. Here's the thing. We've seen this with, your other team that we cover here at Washington not long ago with Darius Geis. Very, very similar situation. Whereas, okay, Bauer sounds like he's into sexual sadomasochism is what
sounds like.
Yeah. Which, look, whatever people do in the bedroom, as long as everyone's consenting, fine. This goes beyond that. That was not consent at that point.
But the story that the woman told, at least,
right,
which may or may not have happened, certainly was well beyond that. Yes.
Right. I'm just, for the purpose of argument, saying that. Yeah. And what Geis had was more of a domestic abuse situation in the more classical sense, it sounded like, from what we heard. And that case was dropped too. Now, what did Washington do when Geis' situation came up? They just cut him right away.
Well, there's a difference here, though, Alex, in that you can terminate NFL contracts
very easily.
Trevor Bauer has a huge, very expensive, 100% guaranteed contract. Now, there's probably bad boy carve-outs in this contract that say if you go kill somebody, we can terminate you, would be my guess, but I haven't seen the contract. But it's not nearly as easy to cut a baseball player as it is a football player. Guys they can just get rid of and terminate, and that's it. You can't do that in baseball.
Right, and in baseball, everything's fully guaranteed, I know, so you're on the hook no matter what.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
There may be bad boy carve-outs in this thing,
right.
in these baseball contracts. I don't know that for a fact, but I would assume there is some sort of bad boy carve-out, and that's a legal term. I should have explained. So that basically means, I'm guessing, and I don't know this, but it basically means if you do something awful, then the team can terminate.
Right. Well,
I'm guessing, but I don't know that.
I would assume that most sports just have that as part of their standard contract.
Well, the NFL doesn't need it because the NFL contracts
are easy.
The teams can terminate it for any reason.
Right.
So you don't need bad boy carve-outs because it's well past that. And I'm not saying, and again, I don't know that to be true in Major League Baseball. I'm sort of guessing that that's a part of it, but
I mean, baseball has plenty of lawyers. You'd think they would have
but they also have a very powerful union
Yeah.
that negotiates to form contracts. So it's not like the NFL union, which is sort of the weak sister union of sports. But so what is the team's obligation in this situation? And this is sort of a broader question, I think, for society, which is this Me Too movement says the theory behind it is you have to believe all women in order to force society to take it seriously. But my problem with this is believing all women, it sounds great, but you have to have evidence that's evaluated, and people are entitled to due process.
People are entitled to due process in the legal system, of course, but we're not talking about
even in context of sports.
Yeah.
Like the NFL collective bargaining agreement, the standard of proof is very low, but there is a standard. The standard of proof for the NFL basically is we have to have a reasonable belief that you did it. That's sort of what the NFL standard is in the collective bargaining agreement. But it's just so much easier to cut people. Like in the guy situation, again, you can just terminate, and that's easy. That's it, and just get rid of him in 2 seconds. But that's just not the case in baseball.
Well, I mean, I think that there is a couple factors here. I mean, one is what you're talking about with these ease of how to get rid of the contracts, but in the end, these are not normal businesses. Sports is entertainment, and the bottom line in entertainment is putting people on, having people watch. It's having butts in the seats. And you have to every team's going to have to make that calculation when things like this happen. What hurts my bottom dollar more? Is it, okay, if I lose Trevor Bauer, we're losing games. For sure. He's one of your best pitchers. He's one of the best pitchers in the league. But is that worth it if you piss off every female LA Dodgers fan, And it's not going to be every, but a significant number. Like, what percentage of fan base can you upset and get away with it? Because it's not like we're talking about some guy working, a 9-to-5, white collar job where, all right, you did something shitty, but no one knows who you are or what you do. These are high profile, I mean, if this were an A-list actor, I think they would have been cut because, again, their contracts are, performance to performance, so that's easy. If this were, a politician, they'd be in a lot of legal trouble for something like this. I'm trying, you have to compare it to other high-profile positions. Sports are not just, a normal job. You're an entertainer first.
Yeah, well, first of all, Bauer's contract is 3 years, $102 million.
Yeah.
Signed this past year, so he's in year one.
So the Dodgers would be out a ton of money if they just let him go. I get that. The suspension thing, I think, is probably the least damaging thing they could do to themselves long term, while also distancing it.
Well, yeah, and the Dodgers just deferred to Major League Baseball.
Sure.
The manager of the Dodgers, essentially, his comment to the media was essentially, we're just following, doing what baseball said. We didn't protest the administrative leave, and so the Dodgers just deferred. in which is probably the right thing to do. But I'm talking about a bigger question here. So yeah, even again, a politician, even in an actor, situation, an entertainer, or something. I mean, is it right to just cut them immediately if it's just a naked allegation? If there's no evidence that has been put forth yet, and in Bauer's case, there is some evidence. There's photographs of the woman with bruises on her face, and there's probably more that we haven't seen. So there is some evidence, but if it's not an established allegation, is the right thing to do just believe people and take action? So I would argue no.
I mean, I would. I'm not saying. Look, if it's found out this is falsified or whatever, which we'll see. A lot of things can happen. Then that's one thing. Then yeah, go on living your normal. But I don't think it's unreasonable to say, take a step back, because you're facing a serious crime allegation. Your focus should be on that anyway. If you are accused of rape, murder, robbery, whatever, that should take all your focus as a high-profile person, not your job.
Well, and this is why baseball did the right thing, and you couldn't just let him play. You have to do something, and so baseball did the right thing and putting him on administrative leave. But I don't necessarily agree with the team just automatically believing all these allegations and just cutting players, immediately. I don't know. I think that you have to have some evidence first.
I mean, like you said, we know there is some evidence, at least photographs and accusations, and legal filing of some kind. In my mind, that I'm assuming somebody from Major League Baseball, when the Dodgers said we're deferring to you, at least looked at the photographs, read through whatever was put in the.
Well, it's a restraining order. It's in the public record,
right,
so
right.
They just grabbed the restraining order.
Right.
I mean,
I'm
sure,
assuming somebody looked at the restraining order, right?
Of course.
So, I don't think that they would do this if there were no restraining. If someone just, went on social media and accused Bauer or anybody of something.
It's happened many times.
Yeah, but I don't think they would have gotten this kind of suspension.
Yeah.
I think, I think there is a threshold, a legal threshold that has to be crossed, and then you can take some kind of action, and that's reasonable.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think baseball did the right thing, because you can't just let this guy continue to play under this level of accusation. And there is a restraining order, so there is some excuse me, there is some base level of evidence out there that a court accepted.
Right.
Now it's not that hard to get a restraining order, mind you.
Right.
But so it's not a criminal conviction. He's not been found liable in a civil court. It's just enough evidence to convince a court to issue a restraining order. That's it.
Well, I mean, take another example, the Deshaun Watson thing that's going on, which kind of has a lot of parallels.
Tell people what that is.
Okay, Deshaun Watson is being accused by 20 some odd masseuses in the Houston area for acting inappropriate during massages, including things, a lot of forced sexual activity or, requested sexual activity at times that was rejected, things, a variety of allegations.
And I wrote if you want to read about it, I wrote about it on the Hog Side, and we talked about it on this show. The difference, of course, with the Deshaun Watson story, he's being criminally investigated by the Houston Police Department. Right. The difference is the NFL is not in season.
Right, and the NFL,
so there's not really anything to suspend him.
They haven't come out and said anything yet. Really, has the NFL put out any statements?
No.
Yeah,
not formally. What supposedly what the NFL needs to do in that situation is put him on the commissioner's exempt list. They have not done this yet. The NFL has not insinuated. The NFL has kind of leaked to the media that they haven't done it because the NFL is not in season yet, and so it doesn't really matter. I think the truth is, the real reason they haven't done it is he's a franchise quarterback.
Of course. But,
if it was like the backup tackle, I think he would already be on the commissioner's exempt list.
Sure, but, I mean, if we're making parallels, what's an ace pitcher compared to in football. A franchise quarterback's
It's the
not
same
far
thing,
off.
franchise quarterback.
Yeah. So, that's kind of my point.
Well, yeah, and again, I'm not saying that Bauer shouldn't have been placed on administrative leave. I think it was the right thing to do.
Sure.
The emphasis to the discussion point for me was, should the team cut him?
Yeah. I don't.
Should the team cut Deshaun Watson for it? Because there's tons of financial implications for the team for that, for the Texans for that.
Right.
Because he's got a huge contract, tons of guaranteed money too. Or do you just let it play out and let the legal system work and see what evidence is presented? To me, what the Me Too movement should have been about was taking the allegations seriously and investigating all the allegations. That's what needed to happen. You can't just believe everything, because that's not due process, and that's not fair to the accused at all. And so the real message should have been investigate and take seriously all claims. And when applied to sports teams, that means you got to put these guys, you got to suspend them.
Yeah.
And wait it out.
But so in that sense, I think, like you said, MLB's acting correctly. Suspend them, let this play out, and that's what the NFL should do with Watson. If it turns out they're guilty, then you have your recourse to say, all right, you can no longer play in our league, or whatever you need to say.
Yeah, well, if it's true, the dude's going to jail.
Yeah.
Because the allegations are sexual assault, battery.
Right.
They're really ugly, and he would end up in jail for some period of time.
Well, you know as well as I do what happened with Darius Geis is he basically just went to the woman and she retracted her statement.
Yeah, but the Darius Geis allegations, which are sitting across the folder across the room from me right now, were misdemeanors.
True.
Okay?
Yeah.
There was only one felony, and in the world of felony, it was much, much less serious than rape, which is what this woman has alleged, and assault and battery. That's much more serious than the Darius Geis situation.
Oh, sure.
Much more
serious. But I'm just saying, rich people can buy their way out of a lot of trouble. That's
yes,
point.
they can.
Yeah.
Kobe Bryant, rest in peace, did this. In the same thing. So yes, that could happen. Yes, and Bauer obviously has tons of money and could throw dollars at him, but this just feels different to me.
Well, we'll see. I mean,
we'll see.
I'm not out in LA, so I don't know what the vibe out there is, and I'm not a big Dodgers fan. So, you probably get a
and like I said,
sense of
there's a lot
that.
A lot of people didn't like them signing Bauer in the first place because he's had allegations of bad conduct before. If you believe it all, he's not a particularly good person. If all this stuff is true, and so this didn't surprise a ton of people, and a lot of Dodger fans just want the team just get rid of him. And I'm just telling you guys, it ain't that easy. Let's move on here because I think we've gotten
enough out of that.
Enough bad out of this. Let's move on to something a bit humorous here, which is Zach Wilson. Now, Zach Wilson was the number 2 overall pick?
Number 2 quarterback. Yep.
To the
Jets.
Which team draft? Thank you, the Jets. And so Zach Wilson has a mom, as we all do. But the difference between his mom, and our moms is that she is a social media influencer on Instagram.
Right.
And she apparently does a lot of female lifestyle related type stuff and some female empowerment stuff, that kind of thing. And she has openly talked about on her Instagram about, how she does it because she feels she's helping women feel better about themselves and is improving the lives of women. That's what she says. Now, Zach Wilson has openly in the public said that he wants his mom to get off of Instagram, and he's offered to pay his mom to close her Instagram account. And she said, "Hey, sweetheart, it's not about the money. It's about the impact I'm having on women." But Wilson, what Wilson has said here is, it's not that she's embarrassing him. It's that he doesn't like his mother getting a bunch of negative comments, which she does.
Right.
So it's It's an interesting story. Alex, your thoughts?
Well, okay, so I would put a slightly different spin on part of the reason why, she's been getting some heat. And she's not just into some kind of female empowerment thing. She's also been a bit of an anti-vaxxer at times, and she gets rather political. And that's why he wants her to stop, and because that's why she's getting criticized. He's getting criticized for it as well. I think he's got the Michael Jordan mentality of even Republicans buy sneakers. So, he doesn't want to, get into politics. And
his mom's a political conservative.
Yes. And like I said, also an anti-vaxxer, which that's neither conservative nor liberal. That's just a whole brand of crazy. So,
Well, I mean, I don't call it crazy. I mean, I've taken the vaccine myself, but I wouldn't call it crazy so much as it's a minority alternative view about medicine that not many people share.
Right.
And I think from a...
We're not just talking about the COVID vaccine, though. I think she's into the whole anti-vax thing.
I know,
Yeah.
I know. I just don't call it crazy necessarily. It's just I think it's without medical basis, but I wouldn't call it crazy.
Well,
go ahead.
It's funny to me that that he offered his own mom money. And
In public, not in private.
Yeah. Yeah, and the thing is, they're a wealthy family, so she doesn't need it. His family's pretty well off.
Yes,
so.
This is not like your typical,
Right.
This kid grew up in poverty. No, Zach Wilson's family has a lot of money.
Right. I don't know if he's like Johnny Manziel family rich, but they were doing okay.
No, but there's not an amount of money that Zach Wilson has that he could offer his mother that would matter to his mother.
No.
Put it that way.
Well, look, even if you're well off, if someone offers you $50,000 or whatever, you're going to take it generally, because why not buy a new car? That kind of thing.
Well, this is playing out on social media,
And that's what's fun about it. And
that is what's fun about it. Because if I wanted my mother to stop doing something, my first reaction might be to just call her on the phone and ask her,
right,
rather than putting it out on social media.
Right. Even, as somebody younger, and all right, Zach Wilson's what, 22? So he's now 16 years younger than me. And, just text her or something. Like, don't do this via Instagram or Facebook or Twitter.
It's a weird dynamic.
That is.
It really is weird.
And it's the ultimate. We're all embarrassed by our parents at some point. I think that's natural, especially when you're a younger adult. But it's like the "Mom, stop it" kind of moment that he's having.
That's basically it.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, I wouldn't care. And I think all moms, just like anyone, are entitled to their political views, and I wouldn't care.
Sure.
But I get it when you're 22, I kind of get it. Because that's basically what you just said. That, Mom, stop it. That's
right.
What's going on here.
That's exactly what
public.
it is. He's embarrassed by his mother. Aren't we all?
Yeah, that's basically it.
Yeah. We all love our moms. They embarrass us.
We'll see what happens here. We'll see, it's as the world turns. Will Mrs. Wilson close her Instagram account? Mm-hmm. Will Zach Wilson continue to be embarrassed, and will he continue to offer his own mother money publicly? We'll see what happens here.
What do you think Zach Wilson's dad is thinking at this point, too? Because he looks like a guy who's probably just sitting on like a lazy boy, drinking like a very expensive scotch, just being like, what's going on? I don't want to. Yeah. I don't want to be involved.
If I were Zach Wilson's dad, I would want no part of the argument.
Right.
It's not a winning hand he can play here.
It's a total Kobayashi Maru for him. You can't win.
Alex pulling out the Star Trek reference.
Yeah, and one you actually picked up on.
Well, yeah, I'm a Star Trek fan. I do like Star Trek, and the Kobayashi Maru was in
it's one of the
Star
most
Trek.
Iconic things in Star Trek. Yeah,
I think it came out in Star Trek, the second movie. I believe it came up with, and it was. Yeah, and it was a scenario in training that in the movie they put all Starfleet officers through. That was an unwinnable situation, and how do you react to the unwinnable situation? And in the movie, Captain Kirk beat it by cheating basically and reprogramming the scenario to allow him to win. And so that's how he handled it. But so this Kobayashi Maru thing, as applied to Mr. Wilson, is I don't want to tick my wife off.
Right.
because that's not going to be good for a happy home. And I also don't want to tick my son off either, who's Mr. Quarterback. So what do? He's going to defer to going, I'm just sitting here watching a ball game.
Yep,
That's what his answer is.
I've got a lazy boy. I got some scotch. I'm good.
Exactly. You two figure it out, man.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I think we're going to end it there. So that is another episode of It's Just Business for today. Stay tuned. Stay tuned, like we're on a radio station. Please, I'm thinking for us, because we're gonna meet here again in a few minutes to do the Hogsty. We're doing we're wrapping up the end of the Hogsty's off-season program here. We're about to head into training camp, but we're still doing one show a week. So please listen to that. We've got all of our regular written content. Seasons of Discontent is off until the 11th of July, I believe. So another week off of that. But Rick Snyder and his All Things Washington, D.C. Sports and Life show will be back in a week, so stay tuned for that. Until then, we will see you all next time.